Welcome everyone to Runway's first AI Film Festival. So tonight we gather again to celebrate everyone who's embracing this and kind of like pushing the boundaries of storytelling. There's a lot of things we need to still uncover and discover, and a lot of things are being invented. But I want to get your thoughts, guys, on how you all think about the space. Paul, I'll start with you. You always tend to work with new mediums and kind of like push the technology forward in very interesting ways. I'm curious about your take on AI and how it's been reshaping your own creative process.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I found it a bit reinvigorating, just personally, where the barrier to entry to get the idea in your head onto the screen has like been cut down considerably. So there'd be ideas where, I'd be walking around and be like, oh, that'd be like an interesting visual or technique or whatever, but then I'd kind of write it down and abandon it because just the process it takes to make it, would kind of slow you down. And now there's not really those speed bumps anymore, and so there's not really excuses anymore to not do stuff. So to me, that's the most exciting thing. We can talk about the downsides of this, but I think for independent filmmakers or people that are not even filmmakers quite yet, this is like an incredibly exciting time. Really, we haven't even seen anything like it.
Souki, you work a lot with non-fictional work as well. How do you see that being used, or these new technologies, not just pushing, I guess, the field forward in fictional work, but also in non-fictional work?
Yeah, the thing that I love about documentary filmmakers is they're incredibly resourceful. You'll see someone running down the street with wires coming out of their backpack and carrying a camera and running after a subject, and it's pretty incredible what can be done with a very bootstrap mentality. And so I think from the training of documentary that requires so much autonomy, and honestly, you just don't have the resources to have a budget, to hire an animator, to find the team that's gonna make it look as beautiful as possible. So you have to be that person. These tools offer people who came up in that world, the like multi-hyphenate, everything, everywhere, all at once, because you have to be. It makes it so much easier for those kinds of people to prototype, to iterate, to fail quickly, to have the experiences of a design studio or of an engineering company that has the resources to do that, but in their own pockets, in their own homes, and even the only thing that's limiting is your Wi-Fi.
And you're also working on a new film about just generative AI, right?
Yeah, so I'm working with The New Yorker on a film about ChatGPT, and we want to make the whole thing use generative AI to see the world of humans through the eyes of a large language model, which is complicated. It's hard to understand what AI is. We don't have the language for it, really. And so film is an incredible medium. Generative AI is an incredible medium to try to take the sheet and put it over the wind and try to explain it to people who might not really get it viscerally.
Cleo, you work a lot on making sure people understand the technology and the limitations and the possibilities of it, right? Where do you think we are and what's coming next?
I got a big question.
No pressure.
Listen, I think that when you think about the landscape of a lot of these tools, there are areas where we're already on pretty firm ground, and there are areas where there are earthquakes. And to me, journalistically, looking at especially large language models, for information, for synthesizing large studies, things like that, like earthquakes. Not there yet. Don't use it that way right now. But I do think that there are aspects of journalism in particular, and aspects of filmmaking with which I'm less familiar, that involve a lot of the tools that we are really on firm ground on right now. So for example, the elements of generative AI that are dreamlike or look like visualizing someone's memory can unlock a lot of forms of storytelling that I think are really beautiful and haven't been easily accessible for, to your point, people who want to make those kinds of stories without spending huge amounts of money. The best example of this is my former colleague Joe Posner is running a team at Semaphore that is using, I believe, Stable Diffusion to animate memories of people who have firsthand experiences of things like the war in Ukraine. And you're not expecting that visual to be, a specific kind of data viz, Like it doesn't need to be high fidelity information in that way. You can evoke a feeling or, help someone visualize a story that they wanted to tell without needing to either spend weeks and weeks creating an artistic animation, which I have tried to do, or not telling the story in the first place. So that's what I think is really exciting right now. That's where I think we're on really solid ground, and I think we're only scratching the surface right there. So when I see people trying to use it for other applications where there are earthquakes, I think there's a lot of rich area to explore just right here.
Darren, you've been working a lot with all types of production, budgets and sizes, right? How do you see this not only changing, I guess, your own workflows and your own production cycles, but also affecting both the large, big production budgets, but also the small ones as well?
It's going to change a lot. There's a lot of immediate things that are really obvious. On one project we've worked on, we've spent months on certain ideas to bring them to light with working with many, many artists. And then in 15 minutes of playing on Midjourney with just a few prompts, I was able to get images that were pretty close to what took months and lots of money to get there. So as far as conceptualizing ideas and projects and creating worlds, there's clearly a huge tool that's been unlocked and now is available to everyone. So that's exciting. But I think it's hard to imagine every single corner it's going to change and invade, but I think it's also a really exciting time because of there's just so many possibilities for such a new type of visual landscape in so many different ways to start to emerge.
It's very interesting. I know a few common threads. One of them was cost for you all. I think cost of production, right? It feels like that comes to be a common narrative where a lot of the tools that you start seeing now are going to help drive the cost of production down, right? Which for you all is
But that's because you're not charging any of us yet.
Yeah.
Just wait.
But overall, it's going to go down, right? Significantly. Just a few bucks. Good point. But how do you guys see, I guess, the change that will come and allow for other filmmakers that perhaps didn't have the means, right, to even pay for larger production budgets to start making the films and the stories that they want to tell in ways that perhaps weren't possible before? I leave that open. I don't know if anyone wants to.
I mean, you're seeing it with images already. There's people who have 300 followers on Instagram and have images that you've never seen before. And there's tons and tons of examples of that. So with Gen 1, that's just going to be taking to a new level of what's possible in animation. So we're really at the beginning of a whole new type of visual landscape. ChatGPT 4, I have no idea what it's going to do to all of us, but it will be interesting as well.
I'll answer that too. This isn't specific to AI, but I helped design and run a mentorship program for emerging doc filmmakers. And one of the things that surprised me was how the first questions that they would ask were something akin to but where do you get the answers? There was some room somewhere that could unlock all of the secrets of filmmaking. And I found that in the sort of disorientation of this time with these tools that are emerging, I definitely feel that feeling that I want to ask someone, where are the answers? How do we make these films in an interesting way? And it feels like I'm running into the future with my pants half on, just trying to not be left behind. And a lot of these young filmmakers that I was seeing had that same feeling oh my God, I'm going to be left behind if I don't find these answers. And I think what's really exciting about these kinds of tools is it offers an opportunity to democratize access as long as we can keep reminding ourselves that it's not too late for anything. And there's so much time to explore and experiment. And it's not about necessarily getting there faster or being the first person to do it as much as collaborating and connecting with other people who are pushing the mold of what a film could be, what a story is, how craft is explored, the processes, the protocols that you create. There's such a rich place to dive into with these tools, and it isn't necessarily formulaic. And that's the exciting part, is that it feels new for the first time.
Yeah, I'll just piggyback on what you're saying there, and I guess that the flip side of like, oh, it's cheap is like, oh, I have more time, and to me that's really valuable because maybe cheap is great for like people just starting, but time is also valuable if we're going to adopt this as like an industry, and if it's going to be like accepted among the professionals, is time is really important, and efficiency. And what you get from time, the value of time, is exploration and not shutting down ideas. Sometimes you're forced to settle a lot with production because of time, and the production designer's like, sorry, we're out of time. We have to start building this yesterday, or what. I think it's really cool as actually a production design tool. If you're designing a set or a model, if you have to do concept art for that. So you're kind of forced due to timelines to make decisions, and but that goes for the screenwriting process. That goes for and the image making process can feed into the screenwriting process and vice versa. So to me, that's what's really exciting is that, and for all the people that are worried about like, oh, this is going to take away jobs. I think also the flip side of that is there actually could be a lot more jobs, because there could be just like the production might get really crazy. Like I saw something that like someone was predicting that just AI in general is going to increase GDP by 50% in the next 3 years or something like that. That's one person's prediction. But that so they might have been homeless too. I don't know if it wasn't written down as a tweet. It was just some homeless guy told me that. No, but I guess that you could apply that same thing to like filmmaking. Is like, yes, like there could be some jobs lost, but there may be this aggressive, now we can make a lot more stuff, and then what comes with like oversaturation is ideas. So that's what rises to the top. I think when things do get democratized, now spectacle won't be as valued as much as it is now, which I actually think is a good thing. As much as my work is like a bunch of pretty visuals, I think if you can remove the spectacle aspect and give everyone the ability to make spectacle, then we won't, as a society, like value spectacle as the main thing that brings us to the movie. It's spectacle and story and characters and humans. That's what like lasts. So it'll force like good ideas to rise to the top.
Any advice for filmmakers or storytellers who want to get started with the technology? I feel like there's a lot of misconceptions or ideas about how it works, and you all have been thinking and incorporating the technology and these new possibilities within your own process. Any advice for folks who want to like start?
Yeah, sign up at runwayml.com and
before the pricing gets bad.
I assume everyone's on that.
But I guess my point is there's a lot of tinkering and experimentation words that Souki, you were mentioning, and Cleo as well. Like how you drive the technology forward in ways that goes away from just like pure research into like creative explorations. And I think that's the history of filmmaking in general. You get like people who weren't supposed to use the technology to like push it, right? I think like experimentation is a common thread in that kind of like perspective. So I'm curious, like, how do you guys think about experimentation in that context?
I'm just going to jump in real quick, and then Cleo, you better go. I think what I'm actually really excited about is the styles that last. Like right now we're tinkering, we're exploring, we're seeing what works, what doesn't, what is terrible and abhorrent and no one should ever see. And also so many horrible, really, really repulsive, interesting things that come out. Yeah, terrifying, affecting. So you can tell we're a little traumatized, it's okay. Bear through the trauma. But I think that the value or the interesting thing for me is how this is going to create emergent styles that are their own genres. Like, what are the styles that root themselves and stick? We don't know what those things are going to be, and yet to have a sense of the timeless, what are the things that are going to be evocative of this time, this place, this culture that we're in? And what are the things that are going to go from an experiment and a fad into an actual like school of thought, like Dada or Surrealism? We don't know what the artistic movement is that we're creating, but we are a part of something that is emerging.
Love that.
Thanks.
I think we're kind of in the soup right now. I would agree with that. I think the question, what's the best way to get into this? I would say just begin to use one of these tools that you find yourself interested in and do your own experimentation to discover, and you will discover quite quickly what people are talking about when they say, oh, it's really good at this and it's terrible at this, and these are the ways that it breaks, and that's really interesting. And it really doesn't take long. Like, go play Hangman with ChatGPT. Like, you'll see the ways that it is astonishing, like it can describe Hangman, and also it will forget what letters are in what position and tell you the wrong thing, and it's impossible to play with. And so I think the same thing applies with imagery, just to explore what is possible with these tools. And then if you're consistently doing that, you're going to notice that the tools are changing so fast that when I made a video about image generation, 4 months ago, it's completely outdated now. And I think the thing that I'm really interested in right now is we're in this moment where we're kind of in the soup. But if you listen to some of the leaders in this space who are actually building the models describe the future, a lot of what they begin to say is that we're going to see private models specialized for a certain thing that you get access to begin to prompt in ways that they would like you to prompt. So for example, you could imagine, and I don't have any special information here, I'm just speculating. But you could imagine the Marvel model. And the Marvel model has been trained on a lot of Marvel movies and all of the data that Marvel has behind the scenes on what went into those movies. And you can begin to create things just within that world specialized to what that model has been trained on.
Darren, what's your take?
There's a lot of beautiful images coming out right now. And it's always going to come back to stories. And I think what's possible with a bunch of words and playing around with the images is infinite. And you can continue to surprise yourself, and that might trigger ideas, but I think it's always going to come back to stories to tell anything longer. I guess if you're a filmmaker or a storyteller, it comes back to stories. You could be an artist working in this field, and you can definitely pursue that in many different ways. But if you're trying to create moving images that do something, if you want to communicate to a large amount of people, it's going to come back to stories and probably get away from the spectacle that you were saying. So there will be a lot of amazing spectacles, and there will be amazing artists that will work in this medium and make incredible visual images. But if you want to get like emotional responses from the largest amount of people all over the world, it's going to once again come back to stories. So I think it's an interesting tool just to mess around with for sure. But if you actually want to build towards something, you should start with a story and then start to think about how the images that are now at your fingertips and that anyone can create can help you to sort of imagine where that story can go and how you can work with it to allow that story to evolve. But you're always going to come back to what the core emotion of that story is.
I love that. I love that, coming back to stories. I think that's actually why we're here today, to celebrate those storytellers and those stories. I'm being told that we need to move on. So please, a big round of applause for everyone. Darren, Cleo, Souki, and Paul, thank you guys for joining us tonight.